Welcome to our first online economics lecture. This lecture starts off with a brief description of the economic resources and how they apply to the definition of economics. We will use these as the basis to explain the most important part of this lecture, the production possibilities model. Economists refer to four economic resources. The first economic resource is land. Land refers to any of the what McConnell calls gifts of nature. So oil, natural gas, wind, solar, copper, minerals, lumber, all of these things are land resources. And land receives rent or rental income. We will see that each of these economic resources has a specific type of economic income associated with this. Capital. Capital are manufactured tools or aids used in the production process. So for instance, machines, equipment, these type of items are capital resources. Capital receives interest or interest income. When a business purchases a piece of capital, economists refer to this as investment. So for instance, if Ford Motor Company were to buy an enormous machine for stamping hoods on cars, we would say that investment spending, maybe it was $20 million, that $20 million worth of investment spending, Ford invested in new capital. If an accounting firm purchases new software for its computers, this would likewise be a capital investment. So land and capital are the property resources. What about the human resources? The first human resource is labor, and labor refers to both the physical and mental capabilities of human beings. So labor receives wages, and wages means both the paycheck you receive and the fringe benefits as well. So labor is a pretty straightforward economic idea to explain. If someone works a construction job, that person is, whether they're working as a carpenter or a plumber or an electrician, that's labor. But also if you're a biochemical engineer working for Merck Sharp and Dohme, that would be considered labor. The last economic resource and the second human resource is the entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs are unique in that they decide how to employ the other three economic resources. So for instance, what's the best way to combine land, capital, and labor? Entrepreneurs often come up with new products or some type of twist on an older product. So entrepreneurs are innovative, they're creative, and entrepreneurs also take on risks. So if you look at the economic income associated with this resource, entrepreneurs can receive profit, but they are at risk to receive loss as well. Why are we going to study the production possibilities model? There are four important economic ideas associated with the model. The production possibilities model, first and foremost, helps us understand the limitations of production. We just reviewed the economic resources. There is only so much land, capital, labor, and entrepreneurability available at the current time. So for instance, if the production possibility model is examining our ability to produce for this entire month, we only have so much land, capital, labor, and entrepreneurability available to produce goods and services. So because of our limitations, we cannot produce everything we want. This gets to the very heart of economics. The definition of economics being the social science concerned with the most efficient use of society's limited or scarce resources to provide maximum economic wants. Because we have a limited amount of land, capital, labor, and entrepreneurability, every time we choose to produce one item, there's a cost involved. That leads us to the second reason we study this model, choices and costs. If we employ land and capital to produce one certain type of item, this land and capital cannot be simultaneously used to produce something else. The example in the McConnell books is the pizza robot production possibilities model. We will get into this on a later slide. Pizzas represent consumer goods. Robots represent capital goods. If we put to use some labor to produce consumer goods, those human beings would not be available to produce capital goods at the same time. Therefore, every time we make a choice as to what we want to produce, there's a cost involved. We can't have simultaneously more pizzas and more robots. The next reason we study the model is economic efficiency. We will review economic efficiency in detail in the next slide. For now, suffice it to say that because resources are scarce, it makes sense that we want to produce in a most efficient manner. Finally, economic growth. What about the future? There will be times when we are examining what would cause us to be able to produce more goods or services in the future. So the model is helpful because it helps us examine the possibility of economic growth going forward. Economics and efficiency. There are two types of efficiency. The first one being full employment. Full employment is a pretty straightforward economic idea. It simply refers to using all of your available resources. So the production possibility model is going to examine our ability or our limitations to production for a certain time period. So let's say per month. So if this is 1 month's worth of production possibilities, we want to put to use all of our land, capital, labor, and entrepreneur ability. Of course, in the short run, not every single economic resource is available. We consider child labor inhumane, therefore children under a certain age, say 15, would not be available as laborers. Likewise, we wouldn't want to chop down every tree in the forest for lumber this month, so some part of that economic resource would not be available. But in order for us to reach maximum efficiency, it makes sense that we would put to use all of our available land and capital, labor, and entrepreneur ability. The second type of economic efficiency, full production, has two specific types of efficiency associated with it. Full production involves, first and foremost, productive efficiency. Productive efficiency is a straightforward idea as well. The definition associated with productive efficiency is producing in the most cost-effective method. In other words, using the least amount of economic resources necessary to produce a good or provide a service. So for instance, I have a Droid X cell phone. I don't know the exact number, but I'm going to make this number up. Let's assume it takes $50 worth of land and capital, labor, and entrepreneur ability to make a Droid X phone. Well, if we can produce that phone with $50 worth of resources, don't use $60 worth of economic resources. Using a much more simple example, what about a table and chairs in your backyard made of some plastic material? That table and chairs may mandate $23 worth of economic resources. So do not use $28 worth of economic resources. Productive efficiency, produce in the most cost-effective method. Allocative efficiency is a little more challenging of an idea to grasp. However, I think as we go through the slides and we actually get into a model, it'll be easier to understand. For now, let's define allocative efficiency as the proper mix of economic output most desired by society. In other words, the combination of goods and services that society most desires. When we look at the model for pizzas and robots, what combination of consumer goods and capital goods is most desired by society?